In Part 4 of Lecture 5, we will discuss converting the grammar for the JSON language into LL1 form. Before we can do top-down parsing on the JSON programming language, we need to convert the original grammar into an LL1 grammar. As you can see here, we have on the top of the slide the original grammar and the LL1 form below. In these three productions, there is nothing that needs changing, and that's exactly what you see here, the exact same thing in both. What we see here are the productions for variable declarations in the plural and variable declaration in the singular. Now, although we would almost always have at least one variable declaration, and we have to allow for an indefinite number of them, there's also a very real possibility that we might not have any. For that reason, we have variable declarations derives variable declarations, again in the plural, variable declaration, or the empty string. What you see below gives us an example of that. Variable declarations derives variable declaration in the singular, variable declarations in the plural, or it could just as quickly derive simply the empty string. This is due to the unusual circumstance. Normally when we have this kind of indefinite repetition, we're assuming that we'll have it at least once. In both cases, though, you'll see we still have variable declaration derives data type and ID as before. In the original grammar, you see we had data type derives real or integer. We'll break these into two separate productions below. Data type derives integer, data type derives real. There is nothing to be said about the reversal of the two other than that it was done arbitrarily. On the other hand, we have ID list derives ID list comma ID or ID. That's going to require the basic change over that we saw from Aho, Sethi, and Ullman, and you'll see this in productions 9, 10, and 11 on the bottom of the slide. Here we have a situation very similar to what we had earlier with variable declarations. Here we have procedure declarations derives procedure declarations in the plural, procedure declaration in the singular, or procedure declaration in the singular, or an empty string. There is no requirement that we have any procedures here to declare. If you look below, this leads us to a situation similar to before. Procedure declarations in the plural derives procedure declaration, procedure declarations in the plural, or procedure declarations in the plural derives the empty string. We now have procedure declaration in the singular derives procedure header, declaration section, block, semicolon. This and procedure header derives procedure identifier parameter list appear below unchanged from the original grammar. As before, a parameter list is an open parenthesis, parameter declarations in the plural, close parenthesis, or simply an empty string. We have these split into two productions below in the LL1 grammar, productions 16 and 17. Parameter declarations derives parameter declarations in the plural, semicolon, parameter declaration in the singular, or parameter declaration. This gets the same treatment we've seen before in cases from Aho, Sethi, and Ullman. And lastly, the last production just remains the same as we saw before. Block derives begin statements end remains the same as we go into the LL1 grammar. Statements in the plural derive statements in the plural, semicolon, statement in the singular, or statement is again going to get the Aho, Sethi, and Ullman treatment. In the LL1 grammar, it becomes statements derives statement, more statements. More statements derives semicolon statement, more statements. More statements can also derive the empty string. Here all you'll see is a single production from the original grammar. There are 8 different alternate rights intentional forms. You'll notice here the statement can derive read ID, write ID, set ID equals expression, if condition then statements, else clause and if, while condition do statements end while, until condition do statements end until, call ID arg list, and the empty string. In the LL1 grammar, you see the exact same statements broken into 8 separate statements instead of one statement with 8 separate alternative rights intentional forms. This will make it easier for us to use later. Else clause will derive else statements or the empty string. And you can see this directly below, broken into 2 separate productions. Arg list is arguments in parentheses or an empty string. And again, you'll see it appearing this way below as, again, also broken into 2 separate productions. But we are here in the LL1 grammar just abbreviating arguments as args, to save a little space. Lastly, you can see again left recursion. Arguments derive arguments, comma, ID, or simply ID. And again, the Ahossethian-Ullman change to make it LL1. Here we have the 3 last productions in the original grammar. Factor derives ID or constant, which in the LL1 grammar is broken into 2 separate productions. And the same thing for add up and multup. One final note that should be mentioned. You'll notice that the LL1 grammar is considerably longer. The other one we had somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 30-something productions. Here we have 57. It's not just because we're splitting the alternative right sentential forms into separate productions, but every time we have recursion, where previously with left recursion we had 2 alternative right-hand sides, now we have 3 separate productions to deal with.